So I'm trained in Hellenistic astrology, and I do some modern Western astrology stuff too. But what's awesome about Hellenistic ancient astrology is that they have these like clear-cut techniques that's kind of just like very mathy that allows you to be very precise when it comes to prediction. And this is actually something to bring up, is that Hellenistic astrology is so much more about fate, and Western, like modern astrology, is about kind of like psychology and like what's happening in your psyche while like the planets are moving. So it's a beautiful combination. And one of my favorite techniques in ancient astrology is profections. And maybe some of you are aware, but profections basically have the attitude that you are not living your entire birth chart out at once. You are hatching certain parts of it every year. And this is awesome because if you've noticed by watching the video, like transits can be complicated. You know, there's all these planets moving around at once. Like, how do you connect the dots? Which, I mean, that is the skill of astrology, is finding the pattern of all these moving parts. With profections, you can be like, okay, yes, there's all these moving parts, but let's just focus on this part of it. And so it just really like narrows in on what's going to be important that year. And this is how it does it. Basically, it assumes that every age or every year you hop a different house. So when you're born, you start at the rising sign. When you turn 1 year old, you hop to the second house. When you turn 2 years old, you hop to the third house. So basically, you are walking around the chart every year, okay? And when that's the case, if you're if you're like 16 years old here, that means you're in a fifth house profection. So the sign that is in that house is going to be ruling that year. And by that I mean, what's the planet that rules that sign? So if the sign is Taurus, if you have Taurus in the fifth house and you're 16 years old, Venus will rule your year that year, right? And plus, like, that year is going to be a very fifth housey year. It might be about leisure. Maybe you go on vacation. Maybe you start having wild sex. But also, like, what planets are in the fifth house? That'll also like inform how that year might look like. And then what's happening to Venus that year? Is Venus being transited by Jupiter that year? Oof, that's definitely a transit that will be louder than anything else. Or like, how is Venus transiting around the chart that year? Is it going retrograde that year? That's going to be a very important time of year for you because you're in a fifth house year ruled by Venus. Yeah. Examples. Through Maya Angelou's life, we're going to see how this works. What's cool about profections is that you'll see all these themes repeat every 12 years, right? Because it goes around the chart. There's 12 houses. So like you'll experience these houses every 12 years. So when you're 4 years old, there's a fifth house theme. When you're 16 years old, there's a fifth house theme, 28, 40, 52. And so you can look back on your life and be like, like, what does fifth house mean to me? What were the events that were happening then? I might like expect that again when I turn 40. Yeah. So if we're going to go through Maya Angelou's life through the fifth house, let's first like, okay, what would a fifth house year be like for Maya Angelou? We have fifth house is Sagittarius. So we know that Jupiter is going to be ruling those years for her. And so we know that Jupiter is in the ninth house in her chart. So like, maybe they are years of like travel and like fun and creative expression. Maybe there are years where she's teaching like her independent philosophy on life. Yeah, Jupiter in the ninth in Aries. And also because Saturn's in the 5th house, maybe these are also like bittersweet years, because Saturn is like, hey, and if you want to have fun, if you want to go travel, you're going to have to like go through some hardship as well, or like put in some effort. And then of course, right, 5th house is the house of like birth and yeah, creative art expression. So let's look through her life. 5th house perfection years. When she's 16 years old, she gives birth to a son. Okay, which is lovely. This is very 5th house, right? Except she's 16 years old. It was not planned. It really was a huge responsibility very early in her life, right? That Saturn piece. The next time she's in the 5th house perfection year, she's 28 years old, and she goes on tour with her band and is singing in nightclubs as an exotic soul band, which is very 5th house, right? And also getting that Jupiter in the 9th house piece. And then when she's 40 years old, she writes her first masterpiece, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And she writes it because of the great pain and loss of MLK's assassination. They were best friends. So right, that like Jupiter in the 9th, here's my philosophy on life, and also that Saturn piece, like I have to find it through pain, through loss. Wild, hey? So you know what I do? I have a whole spreadsheet of all every year of my life, and I write down what events that happened that year, so that when I like get to that perfection year again, I can look back and be like, oh, this is the theme that might come up. And I encourage you to start doing that.